It's not recording yet anyway.
Okay, thanks.
There it is.
Oh, got to get the right things up.
Awesome.
Finally, this is what happens when you go from working on 3 screens at work usually to a hotel room with 1 laptop.
Oh.
Everything's minimized and you got to move it all around. So sorry.
Yeah, you're paying, but thank you, Marie. So I want to say welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the July CPS Coordinators Forum. My name is James Fitzpatrick. I'm the Community Engagement Representative on the National Child Passenger Safety Board, and I'm thrilled to be here to moderate today's session of running an inspection station. We'd love to hear who's joining us and where you guys are from. So if you could please drop your name and which state you are in the chat, that would be fantastic. And to have a little fun with today, we would also like to hear about what the first concert was you guys ever attended. So to embarrass myself and age myself a little bit, mine was the Bare Naked Ladies in Toronto. We sat on the grass in the rain and it was miserable, but we went anyway. As a reminder, we are requesting that nobody participate in this webinar if you're operating a motor vehicle. If you are, we will stop the session. Please also, if you could, mute your lines if you're not speaking. That should only be Marie and Liz talking. I'm going to get off here in a second. The recording will be posted to cpsboard.org state-coordinators/forum in 1 to 2 days. So Marie, if you're ready, you can take it away.
I am, and I can see nothing but my slides now. So if there's any, James, you'll help keep an eye on the questions if there's any.
Absolutely.
Or Kendra, anybody, because I can't see anybody, which is really weird. I like to see people, so this is hard for me, but welcome everybody. So great to be here, and I'm gonna just jump in. Sure I am. So I will introduce myself and then I will let my co-presenters introduce herself as well. My name is Marie Snodgrass. I'm a child passenger safety technician and instructor. I work at the CS Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor. I'm the injury prevention program lead there, and I'm also the Safe Kids coordinator for our local coalition, Safe Kids Huron Valley. I've been doing child passenger safety for a really long time. I think I figured out it was 23 years. I've been a technician and I've been an instructor since I started my role at U of M, which was, I think, in 2012. So I've got a little bit of experience, but I love actually working. I've loved doing this with Liz, and I love working with all of you because I feel like I learn something from everybody that I encounter and work with. So thank you for having me, and I'm going to turn it over to Liz to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Perez. I'm also a child passenger safety technician instructor. I'm an injury prevention specialist at Phoenix Children's in Phoenix, Arizona. And I have been in child passenger safety for 14 years now. I became a CPST in 2010. And what I really love about my job is that I get to do both. I have the best of both worlds. I like to do, there's inpatient and there's community. So it's very nice to be able to have both and try to balance those out on given days where it's very, very busy. But I really love what I do and I'm very passionate about it.
So as we're talking about setting up an inspection station or a large child passenger safety event, when Liz and I were talking about this, we actually used a document that is being kind of reconstructed and will be living on the National Child Passenger Safety Board website, and it will be available probably within the next month or so. I think it'll be completed and all the revisions will be finalized and it'll be back up. But we kind of use that as a springboard for our presentation today. But I wanted to take a step back, even kind of go backwards a little bit, even beyond that, and talk a little bit about prior to setting up your station and making sure that when we're setting up events and we're setting up inspection stations for child passenger safety efforts, that we really think about prior to starting what our priorities are as a program. I think that everybody has different priorities and different things that drive us at our agencies, at our organizations, be it data, be it money, be it politics, who knows what it might be, but there's a lot of things that kind of drive us and drive what our efforts need to be and where our focuses need to be. And kind of prioritizing that ahead of time, I think, is really important, because I feel like we get a lot of calls, and if we said yes to everybody who called, I would not be here talking to you today. I don't think I would ever sleep. I don't know if I would get meals. I mean, it would be an onslaught of just kind of being out doing a lot in the community. And not that that's always a bad thing, but we have to realize that we have some limits, and then we have to kind of rein it in a little bit sometimes. And we have to set some boundaries. And we have a somewhat small program, and so we need to make sure. So my program specifically, we've really talked with everybody in the program, and we've set up our program to be really focused on the underserved in and around our community, to look at specific demographics. I work for a trauma center, so we really do look at the numbers of the patients that are coming in. We look at a lot of the demographics as far as zip codes. We look at ages. We look at do we need to really put a big focus on booster seats because we're seeing older kids coming in? Do we need to start focusing a little bit more on a certain area where we're seeing an influx from, maybe we've even seen like certain housing complexes, and that, like, that specific, like, we're able to really kind of dial it down that much. So we've prioritized our efforts to be really focused on some very specific areas in and around our community. Does that mean when people call us that we say, absolutely no? Not necessarily, but we have ways of kind of directing them and making sure that we have resources available to the areas that maybe are a little more resource rich and have transportation and have availability to get to events and get to inspection stations that are out in the community. So we do really try to make sure that when we're setting up something new, that we're making sure that we're doing it in the right places and for the right reasons. We also have had at times different people working in our office, maybe that are answering phones and are taking calls. And it's been helpful at times, whether it be an intern, whether it be an administrative assistant, somebody like that, in that type of a role, making sure that we have somebody that kind of understands what our focuses are and maybe asks certain questions for us, so that when the information gets to myself or gets to somebody else in my program that's helping make those decisions about what we're going to be doing next, or maybe where we can go, that we have a little bit more information in front of us, so we can kind of be prepared for those phone calls when we call people back. Am I calling a preschool? Am I, a local preschool, or is it a Head Start program? Is it, are they looking for something specifically to be held at their location, or are they looking for someplace that they can direct their families? Do they want it in association with a large, like, health fair or family event that they already have planned? Or do they want someone just to come in and maybe have a table at an event where we can share information and resources? So having all of that information is really helpful. And so we've at different times had forms or sheets where people can kind of go down and just ask some specific questions and almost have a template. But just trying to make it as simple as we can and as clear as we can for those that are helping us, so that by the time the information gets to me and I'm calling somebody back, or my other coordinators, as we're calling people back, we have as much information in front of us as possible. When it comes to actually selecting a location, so we've kind of got it narrowed down that, though this looks like a great, area that we really want to do some focus, and some energy and some efforts on. So how do we know if it's going to be a good location, right? So a lot of times what we'll try to do is actually physically, if we haven't been to that location, is we physically will go out and try to schedule a walkthrough or a visit with whoever's in charge, whether it be like a captain at a fire station or whoever's in charge at the location, a manager at a car dealership, different places. We'll go and we'll actually like try to sit down with them, and then just kind of walk around and look at the facility, look at the site that we're going to be working at, potentially. Indoor locations obviously have great perks to being protected from the weather. But sometimes indoor locations, if they're at a police or fire station, can be a little bit of a deterrent for certain populations. So we need to really think through whether that's going to really pull in the populations that we're trying to meet, or not. Outdoor locations are really visible. We might get drive ups. We might get more families that actually see us. So that could be great. But then you're at the mercy of the weather, as we're talking about how hot it is across the country right now. So we have to think about that. And if you live someplace like me, then it limits maybe the months that we're able to do outdoor events and activities, because in Michigan, we feel like we have winter about, 8 months out of the year. So it does get a little challenging sometimes to work around those cold months. So we have to think about that as well. When it comes to actually selecting a location, whether it be indoors or outdoors, we need to make sure that we're making sure that it's a safe location, right? Safety is the number one priority for wherever we're going to be. Having a clear entrance and exit. Generally, I try to arrange for a location, ideally, that has a separate entrance and exit. So we're having a clear path, a flow for our vehicles. And making sure that the traffic can kind of have enough space to flow in and out, but also wait in line if it gets backed up. That can be an issue at some locations as well. We don't want to be backed up onto a road and causing traffic issues. That could be definitely problematic. We want to make sure we have bathrooms available. We could have a lot of pregnant women, and that can be an issue. Also, a lot of small children, and they need to use the bathroom when they need to use the bathroom. So not just for our volunteers, but also for the participants that are coming in. So that's really important. And then when at all possible, we need to make sure that that it's accessible, that we've actually got space to move around for ourselves, but that it's accessible for those with disabilities. So if we have any families that are coming through and potentially are in wheelchairs or have other issues where they need a little more space, we need to make sure that we're accommodating all of them. The other things that we need to think about as well is just kind of making sure that it's a good location for caregivers and children. We've had some different different groups invite us to come and potentially, they want to share their site at their I'm just kind of dancing around. Share their site that they have maybe just created or just built, and it may be a great work site, but it may not be the safest place for young children to be. So we have to think about like if that would be, as much as we try to keep control of them and keep them, contained, every now and then when we're in a car and we're working with somebody, the parent and the child may kind of wander off just a little bit. And as much as we try not to let that happen, we have to be aware that that could happen. And is it going to be dangerous for them? So we need to think about that. The location, again, we need to really think about safety when it comes to traffic and cars potentially being backed up and lined up. That has been an issue for us at a couple of our locations. So that's something that we really, really try to focus on. And then if it's a place where people are still working, like at a car dealership or at a fire station, we need to make sure that they're aware that there are going to be children, small children present. And sometimes they love that. They want to come out and be a part of it, and they want to bring out activities or somebody to kind of help out. We've had fire stations that actually bring out, somebody to like take the children and show them the fire trucks. And then we've got people that are like, absolutely not, this is all off limits. And that's absolutely fine. But they just need to understand that this is the population that we're serving, and this is who's going to be in and out of their locations. I really, really like and encourage people to create an agreement when you get to that place where you're about to set up a fitting station or an event. I do this a little more on my end when it's an inspection station that's going to be ongoing, but to create an agreement between our agency and the site that we're going to be working with. And on that agreement, we like to share with them what they can expect from us. Talks about maybe liability insurance or coverage. That we would like to arrive 30 minutes early to get set up. We come in with all of the necessary supplies and personnel. We clean up. We make sure everything is secure during the event. We make sure everything is secure at the end of the event. What we need or expect from the location or the agency that we're working with. So access, again, prior to the event, access to maybe a specific area, potentially 1 or 2 bays if it's a fire station or an EMS station, things like that, so that we have room for the vehicles, that we are going to need access to the restrooms. A big one for us has been dumpster space. You know, at the end of an event, we often will have car seats that were unsafe that we've had to take from families or that families have left with us, and we need a place to be able to dispose of them. And I can't tell you that there have been so many times that I've had a trunk full of really gross car seats. And we really try to avoid that, leaving an event. So if we can dispose of them at the location, that is always our goal. And every once in a while, they'll offer, we've had places offer a storage space. So maybe to leave a couple of seats or to leave some supplies there so we don't have to take everything back and forth. So that we try to, document all of that. We also will include the date and time. If it's going to be a recurring event, I'll do 6 to 12 months maybe of dates just so that they can add them to their calendar, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Sometimes we'll come up, especially if it's let's say it's the 4th Thursday of the month and it runs into, we get to November and it runs into Thanksgiving or another holiday, things like that. So we need to be able to kind of think about how that's going to play out. And then contact information for both sides. I usually will share my cell phone, and somebody else on the other end will generally do that as well, like some kind of contact information. So if they're not readily accessible or something happens, that there's an emergency, that there's somebody that we can reach. And then any other helpful notes, that may come up. And this is, I'm hoping that you can see this. It's not meant to really be like something that you read right now, but this is just a copy of basically one of our contracts that we've done with one of the fire stations that we work with. And again, this is for an ongoing fitting station, not like a one-time event. But for a one-time event, it could be the same thing, because sometimes our one-time events are really big and we really need to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So I highly recommend this. It's not something that we have to do, but I think that it's been very successful and very appreciated by both sides on our end. And just... and then the other thing I just kind of wanted to touch base on is liability coverage. That seems to come up, and it's one of those things that, to be completely honest with you, and I think I mentioned I've been doing this since 2001, and it's not something I've ever really had to worry about. For the longest time, obviously, Safe Kids did cover technicians and instructors, but honestly, since they haven't been doing it, I haven't had an issue either. It just isn't something that really comes up in the world that I work in, or hasn't yet, knock on wood. But I think there's important things to keep in mind when we're thinking about this and addressing these issues and questions that might come up around this. When we do an event or we do any kind of interaction with parents, I think it's super important to remember that we should always be documenting work and having the caregiver sign at the beginning. There should be some kind of a release statement or a liability statement at the beginning that they read and that they sign, understanding kind of what's going to happen during this interaction. And then at the end, they also initial. So parents are completely aware and a part of everything that's going on. And we are educators. We are not installers. So we are not the last ones to ever touch a car seat. We shouldn't even be the ones finally installing the car seat. It should always be the parents. So I think that's a really important point to get across sometimes. And then also it's super important, I think, whenever possible, to have another technician review and be a part of the installation and look at the form and be a part of that education, just so there's another set of eyes. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing this. I think it's always good to have other people present and other people taking part in those interactions. I think that working at the hospital that I work at, clearly we have a legal department that can be a little challenging at times in a lot of ways. But when it came to talking to them about what we do and making sure that we had coverage when we go out into the community and we go out to do these fitting stations and we do these events, we didn't have any issue with them saying that we were completely covered under our rules at the hospital. When they understood the kind of training that we go through and the certification that we have and that we keep, and then kind of going through these points with them, they said it was pretty much a no-brainer and that it was no issue for them. They helped us write up our statement for our forms, and they've been a part of it from the beginning. So we've had no issues at all on our end. And I know that it doesn't go that smooth for a lot of people, but we've been very lucky, and like to share those points, hoping that it makes somebody else's job a little easier as well. The following are the most common types of coverage that are used for events, I think. So I do know that there are many states that have Good Samaritan laws. And in addition, there are several that have actually included they call it CPS Services Immunity Law that specifically covers CPSTs. So I highly encourage you, if this is a concern or you have questions about this, to check with your state training contract to determine whether this is something that exists in your state. And then there's just general insurance policies like ours, where we're just covered under our hospital insurance policy, doing as long as we have paid staff that are on site at each event, then we are covered, and those that work with us, our volunteers, are covered as well. We just have to have somebody who's there kind of overseeing and organizing. So there always has to be a paid, technician or instructor on staff who's there for that event. But that is the only requirement that our legal team asked for us to have. I do know that in talking to some of the different groups that we've worked with, they've, the firehouses and some of the different groups that we've worked with and along those lines, they've always said as well that there's no issue and that we would have no problem coming in to do this, that we would be covered underneath, if anything happened by their insurances as well. So I kind of feel like all the groups that we work with are all on the same page with that. So it could be the site that's hosting it or the sponsoring organization. But I think that a lot of times just the general insurance policies of the groups will cover the work that's being done. I do know that there are some independent contractors that will also seek out liability insurance themselves. The Safe Kids website has some recommendations for different places that you can check for that. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, I know a couple local technicians that are actually doing that as well. Have never used it, knock on wood again, but that is another option as well. And now I'm going to turn it over to Liz.
You're on mute, Liz. We can't hear you.
I was like, I don't know if anybody's still there because I can't see anything. I'm like, oh my God, I've just been talking and no one's.
Thank you, James. I was on a roll there. Thanks. So the following supplies are helpful during a checkup event or inspection station. It's important to make sure that you have everything you need to run an event well. And it's also helpful when new technicians and seasoned technicians come to your event and know that it's going to be running smoothly. It's been prepared. So let's go ahead and look at some supplies. We look here that we have car seat check forms. Make sure whether you're using your own form, maybe from your own organization, that you have to go ahead and use, or you're using the NDC app, whether it's paper or if you're using, whether it's an iPad or tablet, which if you are, just make sure that they are fully charged. And how many do you have as well to go ahead and use? Current recall list. We want to make sure that we have the most up-to-date car seat recall list. And if you go to the National Child Passenger Safety Board website, you can click on resources, and on resources, you'll go to the accordion files and you will click on recall list. And there's some options there that you can definitely go ahead and print the most current recall list. Educational materials as well, something for the family to go ahead and take home. Maybe for the next steps, does it have your contact information on there as well? Having those in different languages, if you have them, or bilingual for families. Car seats and booster seats. Are you going to, can you replace any? Do you have a couple for replacement if it's possible? And dolls. Sometimes even though we're doing an inspection, children are not always present. Maybe they're at school, maybe they're with grandma. They're just not there. So having dolls present is also very helpful, because talking about harnessing, how to adjust the harness, how to position the chest clip. So it's nice if you're able to have some dolls there that that families can actually practice correct harness use with. Pool noodles, towels. A lot of people use these a type of like pool noodles. For us, ours are a little bit more like rectangular. And if you want to have them for a certain size, it's also nice to have scissors and box cutters. For us here at Phoenix Children's, well, we actually cut them at a certain dimension. And it's actually the 11 inches that, just like we know in regards to the lower anchors. And so that's how we cut ours in regards to, so it's not so long and so forth, but it's also nice to have scissors and box cutters so that in case they are too long, that you can go ahead and cut them. And also if you have new car seats, and you need to take them out of boxes, those are always nice to have as part of your supply list as well. Locking clips, we can't forget our locking clips. I know some places they're not used very often, but we have to keep in mind that that we will have those vehicles where maybe it is an older vehicle that it doesn't have we actually need that locking clip, or also maybe the seatbelts are not working, and that's happened to us where the seatbelts are not working, and so we have to use a locking clip. So having those available is very helpful just in case you need them. The scale and height measure. Now, I like to call what parents give us sometimes when we do appointments, and they go ahead and give us a guesstimation of their child's weight or height. Sometimes if they're like, yeah, they're 2 years old and they're 93 pounds. I'm like, are you sure it's 93? It can be, but are you really sure? So if the child is there, we want to be able to weigh them and measure them and just have accurate numbers. Especially if you're going to replace a car seat, and just making sure that the car seat that they currently arrived in is appropriate for them. Clipboards, pens, pencils, markers, highlighters, different types of writing utensils that you can go ahead and use. Traffic cones as well, very important if you need to go ahead and separate a certain area. Do not enter here, or to actually distinguish between the start of one station, the end of your first station, and it just keeps going on continuously until you have all of your stations just kind of coned off, and also where not to park, where to go. So having those traffic cones is very helpful if you have any. Directional signs too, where should they enter, where should they exit, volunteer parking, or where to check in, where to sign in. It's very helpful when we have signs that are going to direct them on where to go. And not just for parents and caregivers attending, but also for your volunteers, for your technicians when they arrive. Tents, tables, and chairs. It's nice when you're able to have tents for all your station, but sometimes that's just not feasible. That's happened to us where we just don't have enough tents, and it's very sunny and hot here in Arizona. So for us, if we can have tents for all our stations, great. If not, okay. Well, the ones we do have, where are we going to place them? But if you have some available, that's really great. Tables for your technicians to go ahead and finish off their paperwork if they're doing paper forms. Also, we've used them for to go ahead and place the car seats that we want to go ahead and educate caregivers on. Check for the label to see if it's expired, has it been recalled. And we also use those tables for many different things that come in handy. Disposable gloves. Now, many of us have been in vehicles that are not very clean, and so having those gloves is very helpful so that you can go ahead and just use them if again the vehicle is not very clean upon arrival. Hand sanitizer as well, keeping that in mind. And we hope nobody gets hurt or anything like that, no owies or anything from the kids. So it's also good to have a first aid kit. Now for defined roles. Let's talk about defined roles. Are you going to have teams? Are you going to have people who are going to be working alone? How do you want your inspection station or your event to run? When we give technicians and volunteers a heads up, it will help them to better understand their roles and responsibilities and their expectations. So it's very helpful if we lay out those expectations. The volunteers and technicians will come prepared. So let's look at those roles. So we have a variety of roles. Again, this might not be for every checkup event, for every inspection station, but again, we have some roles here that are very helpful. The checkup event coordinator, who is this? They're the ones who are going to plan, they're going to go ahead and promote, they're going to manage the event. So that is our coordinator. Our greeter is going to go ahead and welcome the families, welcome the caregivers upon their arrival, answer any questions, and provide them that clipboard with the check form if we're using paper forms, and have the caregiver fill out that information to begin with until there is a station where they can go ahead and go to. So it's very important to have a greeter as well. A traffic coordinator. We want, again, injury prevention. We want to make sure nobody's hurt, everyone is safe. So they're going to go ahead and direct vehicles as they enter and as they exit. They're going to make sure that everyone is safe and verbally announce when cars are moving within the area. The very well-known vehicle moving, and so that is our traffic coordinator. Child passenger safety technician. So our child passenger safety technician is basically going to be that center role where for car seat education, and they're going to go ahead and provide that hands-on. You also want to make sure that they that their certification is up to date as well, and if you can get bilingual technicians, that's great too, just depending on the community that you are serving. If there's a lot of Spanish speakers, and if you're able to get bilingual technicians, that's great as well. Lead CPSTs as well. You also want to check that their certification is current. If they're an instructor, a tech proxy, or senior checker, that's great. That can be very helpful if they're in that lead role. What are they going to go ahead and do? They're going to serve as that final check on the car seat installation before the caregiver leaves the event. And lastly, we have for a scribe. What are they going to go ahead and do? If you have enough to have scribes, they're going to go ahead and help the technician during the checkup event. They're going to gather, they're going to record that information of the vehicle, passengers, the car seats upon arrival, upon departure. And so it's great if you have scribes that are going to go ahead and assist the technicians. And volunteers. It's really good to have volunteers because just as Marie mentioned before, when we have children that are present, or we need to go get more car seats, or we need to do this, we need to do that, it's really good to have those fillers and to be able to go ahead and have a role for them as well, whether it's helping with the children, whether it's making sure that we're well stocked. Are we running out of pool noodles at a certain station? So it's good to have volunteers and have a role for each of them. Mapping it out. So once we go ahead and find who we need, what our roles are in regards to staffing, and also what supplies we need. If you have an inspection station, let's start off with that. If you have an inspection station, again, safety is priority. Do you have a certain way that you want vehicles to go ahead and park. Now, this is an example of our fitting station, of our inspection station here at Phoenix Children's. So we go ahead and provide this map in regards to a map and a campus map and a picture in regards to what our fitting station looks like, and have families go ahead and come by appointment. Now, when they go ahead and come, we want them to park actually horizontally versus vertical. Again, we don't want them to keep backing up. So we want to go ahead and just make sure that we keep everyone safe. If we have cones, we'll go ahead and put some cones there. Bring our materials as well, whether we need pool noodles, if we need a rolled up towel, anything that we might need, locking clips. And so you want to go ahead and just map out how you want your inspection station to be, and keeping in mind that safety is priority. Now, mapping it out with a checkup event. Now, this is an example of a big event that we just did this earlier this year in March. Now, as you can see, for a checkup event, we have a lot more going on than just in an inspection station. Now, right over here, I like to use the aerial layouts, like in satellite version, but any type of layout that you can go ahead and show and provide to your technicians, to your volunteers beforehand in an email, just so that they're aware, where should they park? Where is the check-in station going to be? Check-in for volunteers, but also check-in station or greeter station for the families to go ahead and arrive. Where are families going to enter? Where are they going to exit? What does the flow look like of your event? And as you can see, in this event, we had up to 16 stations, and all those smiley faces that you see were either volunteers, greeters. In between the actual row of vehicles, those were actually our traffic coordinators that had flags that would flag them down, just because it was a long corridor that we were actually using there. It was a very long parking lot, so we wanted to make sure that everyone was safe and we traffic flowing properly and well. And also you want to go ahead and indicate, where are the restrooms? Is there a break room? How long is your event going to be? Is it going to be 4 hours? Is it going to be 2 hours? And so is there a break room? Is there lunch? Where is it going to be? Where should they head to? So all of this information, it's nice to go ahead and lay it out so that technicians and volunteers have a heads up. So what happens a day of the event? Just depending on if it's a small event, a big event, I usually ask volunteers to arrive 30 minutes to 60 minutes prior. What are they going to help with? Well, we want them to go ahead and help with setups, so setting up the tents, if that's what, if we have tents for that event. Tables, chairs, do we have car seats that need to be moved from the venue outside to where the checkup event is going to be? We want them to go ahead and be a part of it and be engaged from the very beginning to the very end. Also, before the event starts, you want to go ahead and meet with them, do a little pre-meeting before families start getting there, and discuss again the roles and responsibilities. How many greeters do you need? Do you need one on each side? Are there going to be appointments and walk-ins, or is it just walk-ins? What are their expectations in regards to roles? Review any seats that are being distributed, and what is the process for distributing seats, especially if you have a limited amount. And so you want to go ahead and review all this information beforehand. Sometimes it's also good for technicians if they're not familiar with the seats that you're providing. And so it's good to have those there. Photo releases. You have a special process for handling those. Are you going to be taking pictures, videos? Who is giving their approval to take those pictures and videos, and families as well? What we go ahead and do is that we go ahead at the very beginning, the greeter actually provides that information about the photo release. If the family agrees, they go ahead and assign the photo release, and we actually provide them with a colored PCH bracelet. And there, when they go ahead and have that bracelet, they go ahead and we let technicians and our volunteer staff know beforehand that if they have that red bracelet, that means that they went ahead and signed the photo release. So if pictures are going to be taken, and that goes as well for staff. Some staff don't want their pictures taken, which is perfectly fine. But if we want to be able to go ahead and take pictures with those that are okay with it. We also want to talk about breakdown, what we're going to need help with at the end of the event. And take care of your volunteers, especially if it's a very long event, even if it's a short event. Are you able to provide water, refreshments, snacks whenever possible? If we're hosting a very long event, we will provide lunch. And so we want to make sure that they are taken care of and that they come back. And after the event is over, don't forget to send them a thank you email to your technicians for their time invested, and our volunteers as well for their time invested, and that we appreciate all their help and support in making the event successful. And our venue host, thank you for allowing us to go ahead and host the checkup event, the inspection station at their site. And we hope to collaborate again and making sure that families are kept safe.
Just to add one thing to that, I will often add numbers too, because a lot of times the volunteers and technicians love to know how many families we helped or how many seats we donated or gave away. And so I think that always makes them feel really validated and makes them feel good about the work that they did. So whenever you can share like how successful the event was or how many families they were able to help or children that left safer because of their work, I think is always super valuable as well on that thank you email. But I think this is a really key piece that goes a long way with volunteers. So I agree.
And our end goal for all of us is that every child leaves safer than they arrived, and we definitely know that it's ingrained in us, and that's our end goal. And I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you so much, Liz and Marie. Awesome presentation. If you do have any questions, folks, we're happy to answer them. So you could please drop them in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and come on and ask a question.
Hi, this is Kate Bernacki. I'm in California, and I have been a technician for, I don't know, a long time, 22 years, and I'm not an instructor. I am at the State Department of Public Health and help support all the other people who are doing all of these. And a couple of things that I thought to add was that also like doing that meeting right before the checkup event is to help figure out which instructors or proxies can help sign off people for their recertification. So like, I know when people go, they're like, oh, I'm going to get all of them signed off. And, you know, that may or may not happen. So getting a good handle on that for the instructors who are present or proxies who are present, that's really helpful for them. And then the other thing is to find out which of either the scribes or the technicians who are going to be filling out the NDCF, whether it's the paper or the actual whether it's on an iPad or phone or whatever, if they've ever used it before, and helping them through, you know, a practice run or understanding how to use it. So those were two extra things that I thought of.
No, those are great. I agree. We try to ask our volunteers before they're coming out. We do use the NDCF. And so we do, if we see that we've got a new volunteer that's told us that they're coming to an event, we'll actually send them the link to sign up and make sure they have their account and ask them if they have any questions and then tell them they can come early. But that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. We kind of forgot about that, but that's a big, a big change for a lot of us that have been doing this for a while. Going digital has been a little bit of a challenge for some of us.
No other questions in the chat box, so I guess you guys did an amazing job of covering all the information today, so thank you so much for the presentation. If we could skip ahead to the next slide, Marie, if you would kindly. So before we go, just a few closing announcements, friends. As a reminder, we will not have a CPS Coordinators Forum in August. We hope you have a great summer, and we hope to see you guys at Kids in Motion, which is coming up really quick. In September, please join us as Safe Kids shares the State Analysis Project. So that will be our next Coordinators Forum. Also, if you have suggestions for topics and or speakers for future forums, please enter them in the chat box or email secretariat@cpsboard.org. We hope that you will join us in August for a bonus webinar to share resources for a successful Child Passenger Safety Week. In September for CPS Week, we will have a webinar about transporting our littlest passengers. And as soon as the CEU approval is completed, it will be posted. Visit cpsboard.org/webinars to register or scan the QR code on your screen. We are reaching out to each and every one of you as coordinators. We've been making a bunch of phone calls. We're trying to reach out with emails any way we can. And this is one of the very important things we're trying to bring everyone's attention to. And that is that the 2025 National CPS Awards are open. If you work with a technician, instructor, or child passenger safety team that goes above and beyond, please take the time to recognize them at cpsboard.org/awards. The nominations close August 31st. So that is the big one, August 31st. If you nominate before then, we would appreciate it. We are trying real hard to get nominations from every state this year, so we would love to see that. Please email secretariat@cpsboard.org with any questions. We also have an open position on the board. So we're looking for the Public Safety, Fire, EMS representative to join the National Child Passenger Safety Board for the May 2025 to May 2028 term. If you or someone you know is in the fire EMS field and actively working in child passenger safety and interested in applying, visit cpsboard.org/learn-about-the-board/board membership, or please email secretariat@cpsboard.org with questions. So last but not least, thank you again, everyone, for joining today. Thank you to Marie and Liz for the presentation. This CPS Coordinators Forum will be posted to cpsboard.org/state-coordinators/forum within 1 to 2 business days. Thank you again so much for joining us today. Have a safe day, and thank you all for all you do to help keep child passengers and their families safe. Kendra, you can go ahead.